Democrats must recognize that Zohran Mamdani is the future of the party. Unfortunately, it's the Republican Party. Get it? At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
We're watching a generation romanticize an ideology that has never ended well, ever. Bill Maher isn't nitpicking policy here. He's exposing a fantasy. The Democratic Party handed the keys to people who treat socialism like an aesthetic they scrolled past online, not a system that reliably empties store shelves and crushes incentives. What started as a promise of fairness has mutated into a guarantee of shared struggle. Maher is doing the uncomfortable thing, pointing to history's scoreboard while everyone else pretends the game isn't over.
The whole left side of the country catches socialism fever. Let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who before the 24 election said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies?
Politics lives and dies on perception, and the left picked the worst logo imaginable. Maher's point is brutally simple. Americans don't dream of revolutions, they dream of stability. By proudly embracing the word socialism, Democrats didn't signal compassion, they triggered alarm bells. You don't win over a working man by promising to tear down the system that let him build a life. The party once invited everyone inside. Now it's waving a warning sign and wondering why the room is empty. History doesn't whisper, it shouts. And Maher keeps pointing at the wreckage activists refuse to acknowledge. When democratic socialism goes from slogan to reality, the result isn't justice, it's collapse. You can't redistribute your way into abundance. Once productivity is punished and ownership is demonized, people stop producing. The Democrats aren't experimenting, they're gambling, and the house they're standing in is made of dry wood.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence.
America was built on the idea that effort matters. Socialism flips that on its head. Maher tears into a worldview where excellence is treated like theft and success is framed as moral failure. When outcomes matter more than effort, motivation dies. Equal opportunity built nations. Forced equality builds resentment. The party that once celebrated builders now seems more interested in tearing down what others created.
Gen Z thinks socialism's wired and capitalism's tired and billionaires are what's for dinner. And who can blame them? If you're 30 and still sharing a bathroom with roommates, capitalism isn't working for you. People will reject any economic system where there's strange hair on the soap. No one wants to be approaching middle age and still writing their name on food before they put it in the fridge. So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked. Like Kevin Fed.
There's no magic money tree, no matter how often politicians promise one. Maher cuts through the fantasy behind debt erasure and guaranteed income schemes. The bill doesn't disappear, it gets handed to someone else. Usually the guy who played by the rules. This isn't generosity. It's a reshuffle that rewards credentials over contribution. Calling it pro-worker doesn't make it true. It just makes it misleading.
Kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a mess.
Every breakthrough starts with risk. Maher asks the obvious question: why grind, innovate, and sacrifice if success earns you suspicion and penalties? Capitalism rewards ambition. That's why it works. When achievement becomes something to apologize for, progress slows. Taxing drive and demonizing winners doesn't create equality. It kills momentum. And once ambition checks out, the whole system dims. Maher finally pulls the curtain back on the left's favorite talking point. The Nordic countries aren't socialist utopias, they're market economies with safety nets funded by everyone. Not just the wealthy. American progressives sell half the story: benefits without the taxes. It's a fantasy pitch, and voters sense the fine print is missing. When your model only works by omitting reality, credibility collapses.
Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zoran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zolt.
Socialism doesn't just redistribute money, it multiplies paperwork. Maher skewers a system bloated with administrators who regulate without creating. These aren't builders, they're blockers. When infrastructure takes decades and billions to barely exist, that's not progress, it's decay. Bureaucracy isn't compassion. It's stagnation with better branding. The left keeps trying to ignite a class war the working class never asked for. Maher's insight lands hard. Americans don't resent success, they aspire to it. Eat the rich sounds clever until you realize it appeals mostly to people insulated from consequences. Framing the country as villains and victims doesn't inspire, it divides. You can't unite a nation by teaching it to resent itself.
We already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. Therefore, what Biden was...
Here's the irony Maher exposes. Socialist policies don't hurt megacorporations, they protect them. Amazon can survive higher wages and compliance armies. Local businesses can't. Every new mandate wipes out competition and clears space for monopolies. The rhetoric targets power, but the results strengthen it. This isn't rebellion, it's consolidation.
Masking 2-year-olds who never would have died from it and keeping schools closed for far too long. They're definitely afraid of their kids, who from time immemorial have always come up with bad ideas. They're kids, thinking up stupid shit, but they do. But parents used to tell them, that's ridiculous. The world doesn't work that way. Not today's parents. They say, you're right, honey. Gender is just a social construct. Please, sometimes your mother and I forget which one.
Eventually, ideology meets gravity. Maher closes with a warning, not a rant. You can't govern a superpower on resentment and slogans. The Democrats face a fork in the road: return to practical, growth-focused leadership, or follow ideological purists into political exile. Voters aren't asking for sermons. They want opportunity, security, and dignity. If the party won't course correct, reality won't negotiate, it will replace them.
That a congressman merely stands up for the liberal principle The one we used to call, we do still call Title IX, that women get an equal shot in sports, and now it gets you labeled a Nazi. The reason Gretchen Whitmer looked like a toddler playing peekaboo in the Oval Office is she's afraid of the Liz Bratts of the world and the 12 social justice warriors on the internet and what they might tweet to their 7 followers. Alyssa Slotkin calls her party weak and woke. She's right. People vote on instinct. They can smell fear a swing state away, and they'd rather have strong and wrong